Hello everyone, my name's Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon video. So today is going to be another pre-release guide. This time it's going to be for the up-and-coming set BT17 Secret Crisis, slated to be released on August 9th. So when it comes to pre-releases, it is a sealed and limited event. So there's a couple of things you have to keep in mind for sealed and limited as far as what it actually is. You're going to be given 6 packs and, well, you're going to be building a 40 card deck out of the cards you pull from those 6 packs. There's additional rules that go into sealed and limited events to, well, actually make it playable compared to the normal game of Digimon. So some of those rules are going to be players can ignore Digivolution color requirements, but still have to meet level and cost requirements. Colors can also be ignored for DNA Digivolutions and special Digivolutions. However, other conditions like level, name, and trait still have to be met. Colors are still also in effect when it comes to cards asking for specific colors, and you just can't ignore colors all the time. So if a card is, let's just say, asking for a yellow Tamer, you have to have a yellow Tamer to use that type of effect. And options kind of fall into that similar category where you still need to meet the color requirements of the option in order to actually use it. So the other thing to note is during the breeding or raising phase, players can choose to raise a level 3 Digimon if you don't have a Digi-Egg in your breeding or raising area. So this just means that if you run out of eggs, you still actually can utilize your breeding or raising area, and you won't draw for this action, but it's still nice to actually be able to put something in there to have availability at that zone for how the game is played. Then when it comes to why we're playing in pre-releases, part of it is, well, the pricing. So what's actually making it worthwhile to play in the pre-release outside of having access at the new cards a little bit early? And that's going to be the fact that the participation prize is going to be a alt art of the BT17 SR Alphamon. Then, as far as other participation prizes, you're also going to be getting a classic pre-release pack. So as far as what's in a pre-release pack, it's going to contain 2 cards. Both of them are going to be foil and stamped. One's going to be of any uncommon in the set, and the other is going to be of any given rare in the set. Then when it comes to the winner card, this is kind of where this pre-release is a little bit more boring than some of the others, because it's just going to be another copy of the BT13 SR Alphamon. It's going to be the exact same art as the participation prize. The only difference is it probably is just going to have a winner stamp on it. But stores also can throw in additional pricing, again, if they really wanted to. That's purely based on the store, like adding some extra packs and whatnot to the prize pool. So when looking at a set, you should really focus on the rares and below. So understanding how a booster box works can really help determine your odds of seeing specific cards. But ultimately, what you pull is going to determine what you're going to be able to be playing with. Then when it comes to BT17, this is just a normal booster set, so it's not really pull ratio-wise going to be doing anything different than what we've already been seeing. The only thing we do have to talk about and highlight, because I haven't really talked about it or highlighted it much before, is the fact that there is an increase in super rares as of BT14, which was the beginning of Block 3. So this increase in super rares means that you're going to have a smaller chance on seeing any given super rare that you're actually hoping to look for and play with. So why is this important? Well, it's important because in the older booster sets, we had 10 super rares per set, but in the case for sealed and limited environments, as far as what this actually means, it just means that you're going to be seeing any given SR that much less compared to the past. So enough talk about the change in SRs, and let's actually get into the meat of this, which is deck building tips. So remember, you're going to have to build a 40 card deck out of the 6 packs that you pulled, and all of the extra cards are basically going to become your sideboard so you can swap in and out post games. But as far as what a good curve is for a generic stack-based deck in this format, well, this is just the general breakdown you're probably going to want to try to follow. So as far as the level 2s, which is the Digitas, you're just going to play with whatever you got. As far as the level 3s, you're ideally going to want to play 12 of them. The level 4s, you're going to want to play 10 of them. The level 5s, you're going to play 7. The level 6s, you're going to want to play 5. And then you got 6 slots for any other card, which could be Tamers, options, or just more Digimon of any level. So when it comes to the rookies, sometimes you just won't get enough and you'll just play with what you have as well. Then when it comes to card analysis, there is an acronym that I lifted from Magic the Gathering called BREAD. So cards can fall into one or more of these categories, and the more categories they fall into, generally the better the type of card it is. So B is going to be your bombs, R is going to be your removal cards, E is going to be your evasive cards, A is going to be your aggro cards, and D are going to be your duds. So when it comes to bombs, these are going to basically be your win condition. Digimon with high levels of impact, and most of the time, but not always, it's going to be on your higher level Digimon. These are going to be what are going to swing the game in your favor or just flat out win you the game. Then when it comes to removal, this is exactly as it says. These are cards and effects that can help remove problematic cards that the opponent has on their field to try to break certain board states. And these aren't necessarily exclusive to option cards, and in this set more specifically, it's definitely not exclusive to option cards. In fact, it's almost exclusively to Digimon cards. And Digimon has lots of different ways to deal with the opponent's problems in terms of hard removal and soft removal. So hard removal is basically just ways to get rid of the card outright from the field, like deletion, bounce to hand, put to the bottom of the deck, reduce their DP to 0, or just attack into them as a few ways. And there is soft removal, which basically is just making the Digimon as less impactful as possible, like de-digivolve and stun locking their Digimon down. Then when it comes to evasion, these are going to be your defensive cards and defensive mechanics, so that way you could try to keep yourself in the game as much as possible. So these are just effects like blocker and security attack minus that really, again, try to de-incentivize the opponent from attacking or utilizing their Digimon. But Digimon also could have some nice built-in protection that make it that much harder to get rid of if the opponent is trying to get rid of your Digimon. Those are also evasive cards because they're just that much harder to deal with, and these are coming from effects like Reboot, Armor Purge, Evade, and Barrier, just as a few examples. A is going to be your aggro cards, so these are generally cards with cheap and efficient stat lines and just low to the ground cards that can really help boost the overall damage output in the early stages of the game, being more aggressive than other types of cards. And then when it comes to duds, these are just cards you never want to see because they're just going to be too hard to incorporate because they're either asking for specific synergies or too specific of synergies, or they're just asking flat out for cards that aren't even in the set or are referencing cards that aren't in the set because Digimon really likes to do that for some reason because this game is not made for sealed and limited, it's made for constructed, which is why we do get cards that you just don't really want to try to prioritize as a result because they're just going to be too hard to use or effectively useless. And then with Digitamas, we actually do have some pretty useful Digitamas. A lot of them do have some more specific synergy, but they're still just good to have at the end of the day for that extra card draw, even if the effect isn't going to be super useful. So again, you're just going to be playing with what you got most of the time. Then when it comes to Tamers, there's actually a lot of Tamers in this set. Not all are good, and not all colors are even represented. So the most represented Tamers of each of the different color with some overlap are the fact that there's 4 blue, 3 green, 3 yellow, 3 red, 2 purple, and 2 white. So not all colors can use them as generic support, and sometimes these Tamers are playing more into specific synergies. So again, best rule of thumb is the more generic the ability or the more generic the usage of them, the better they're going to be. So green and yellow have some really good effects that are just asking for specifically that color of Tamer, while red and blue can utilize hybrid Digimon, making them the best colors to want to prioritize. So with this set, there is just a lot of notes that I kind of just want to touch up on. So when it comes to Ace Digimon more specifically, there is Ace Digimon in this set. But the catch is, most of the aces are on the high levels and high rarities. So the good news is, you're likely not to see them. The bad news is, because of this, you know exactly when they can come, and they're going to have even more impact on the game because their power level is just that much higher than a lot of the other cards, and because there's overall less removal in the set, it's going to be even harder to deal with them when they're seen. But the set does have a lot of specific synergies in terms of what you're going to be wanting to prioritize, and you're going to want to try to focus on some of the archetypes that have good cross synergy between them to try to make them as useful as possible, like with hybrids, SOC, machines/cyborgs, and Greymon being some of the best cards with cross synergy. Then, as I kind of already mentioned before, there is a higher than average amount of Tamers, and because of that, there's a lower than average amount of options. So with the lower amount of options, that means that there's actually no options with any built-in removal, so all of the removal is going to be 100% Digimon based, and a lot of the removal that we do have is mostly on the mid to low level bodies. And there also isn't that much defensive or evasive tools in this set either, so that's going to make the removal that we have more premium to try to stop and slow down the opponent at specific stages. So this set will be really weird as there's not a lot of cards with good hyper efficient stat lines either. So you are going to want to try to prioritize the synergies that you do have and the general mechanics and tempo that you're going to want to try to find between all of the different synergies that you have to try to make your plays as impactful as possible. But as I kind of alluded to before, the best rule of thumb is the more generic a card is, the better it probably will be performing because it doesn't need any specific synergies to set up in order to make that card impactful. And as a result, I actually do think compared to a lot of other sets, this will be a more rush-styled format as a result. So here's a few examples of just some good generic cards that you want to try to keep in the back of your mind because when you see these cards, they're going to probably be some of the better performing cards of the set for a sealed and limited environment, focused mostly around the low rarity cards. So when it comes to general meta tips on how this set develops in terms of how plays are going to be playing out, there's really two types of approaches that a meta generally shapes around when it comes to pre-releases. The first one being a more low-to-the-ground aggressive style play style, or the second is going to be a more stack and value tempo-based playstyle. So when it comes to a more rush style meta, that's referring to just playing as many low-level bodies as you can, making sure those low-level bodies are efficient and can potentially live through multiple attacks, swarm, and overtake the opponent. This is only viable when there is a lack of blockers and removal and other defensive tools in the set, which is why I think this is going to be a more rush-style meta. Otherwise, if there is enough blockers and there is enough removal to try to go toe-to-toe with just playing a body and swinging, that's when things are going to develop to be more stack and tempo-based approach, trying to focus on having a good high-level Digimon that you're going to want to prioritize and make them as impactful as possible. And then when it comes to just some other general tips in terms of pre-releases, make sure to be as prepared as possible in terms of all of your other supplies. Make sure to have water, snacks, and TCG supplies like a playmat, sleeves, deck box, etc. Relax, have fun. That's all the purpose of this event is just to kind of mess around, play the game a little bit differently, and, just have a good time and experiment and explore what the new cards are offering. As far as other important things to ask when you're going to be building your deck, so these are just some questions I generally find myself asking to see if I can build the best of what I have. What does my card pool look like? What does my win con look like? What synergies do I have, especially cross-color and cross-archetype synergies? And what cards should I actually be using? So going over the bread acronym and taking a look and categorizing your cards is definitely a good way to try to help answer as many of these questions as possible. But that's all I really have for this pre-release guide. It is generally similar to my other pre-release guides, but that's because pre-release as a format really hasn't changed, and it's just what is the set doing in terms of what's actually changing, and how are we going to approach what the set is doing. But as I already mentioned before, just relax, have fun, and tell me in the comments below what your pre-release poll actually looks like when you get to it. And I hope that you found this information to be as helpful as possible, and I'll see you in the next pre-release.